Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about the Bloodline Ascendancies. So yesterday, they released a whole batch of Bloodline Ascendancies, and we now know all but one of them, which is the Breach one, and apparently we're not going to get that one before release because it's kind of tied to the big Breach boss. Overall, I don't mind the Ascendancies. I think the power level is interesting. They are not all that generic, so other than like one or two or maybe three of the nodes, it is hard to take them unless you take them into account with your build. So a lot of the more cookie cutter league starters are not going to fit here, and maybe you can take one, but maybe you don't at all. So like I said, I'll go over all of them and some league start specifics, but I want to start off with Olroth, which I think will be one of the more interesting ones as the league progresses, right? Like after league starters. So Olroth is all about ward. So ward, if you don't know, is a defense that breaks whenever anything hits you, and that was its biggest downside. The second one, they actually mitigated a little bit. They removed the 4-second reload time, so you get your shield back after 4 seconds. Now it's 2 seconds. That was, I think, last patch or the patch before. And you can now get a ton of faster restoration modifiers on gear. I think currently the fastest you can be is a 0.72 second recharge time naturally. Or, and this is what a lot of people are doing, Olroth's Resolve, which does give you 85% less ward, but it makes it so ward does not break. So for example, with this flask, if you have 3000 ward, any hit under 3000 or 3000 does not scratch you whatsoever. If it's 1 over, then you take like 1 life damage. But like I said, the biggest problem with ward is that even if somebody hits you for 1 damage, it breaks and has to recharge. And if in the meantime something bigger hits you, you're left without defense. But Enhanced Starlight is probably the most hype Bloodline Ascendancy in my opinion. Damage taken bypasses Unbroken Ward if the hit deals less damage than 15% of ward. And this is just broken beyond beliefs because it completely removes a big downside. And yes, there's still going to be stuff that's going to hit you for like 16, 17, 18% that's going to get through. But with a lot of recharge and some other stuff we're going to talk about, that might not be as much of an issue anymore. And you're still going to run a certain amount of avoidance. It also gives you 40% increased ward from equipped armor items, plus all of these small nodes give you another 15. All right, but let's say you have 20,000 ward, but you will only have 4 to 5k life. If a small hit goes through, that's still kind of punishing, right? Well, all you have to do is adjust your build so you have enough life to take a 15% hit with Defiance of Destiny. All the hits you're going to take on life will be relatively small, and if you can adjust for that or have like the right distribution of ward to life, you can be completely immune on your life. Now, will this be overkill and you should just run Recoup? It could definitely be the case. Recoup also helps a little bit more against dots, but that's about that. I think this build will be, or it will be at least an interesting shell. Main issue here is that you don't really have a lot of offensive scaling, so you don't want to invest too much into this because I don't think any of these nodes work well with Night Grip. Night Grip completely removes most of the defenses we just talked about. It does give a ton of damage though, so it's kind of like a trade-off. So it's not a situation like, for example, with Strength Stacking or In-Stacking where you would get a crazy offensive and defensive skill at the same time. The next issue or hurdle for ward is that it doesn't help against dots, and Boon of the Mountain is here to solve that. Now, there's some other notes here. The faster restoration per enemy taken hit recently could be really good while mapping, right? Could be ridiculous, actually. And the chance to restore your ward on hit. I know this one looks extremely good, but we already had this during Settlers on a weapon mod, and I tried it and it wasn't as good as I thought it would be. It was just kind of inconsistent, even on a frequently hitting character. Maybe you can try it again. Maybe it's actually better than I give it credit for, but I'm mostly hyped about 30% less dot. And then on the right side, just wanted to point out that we don't know any numbers here. There's a ward chatter. Whenever your ward is broken, you deal physical spell damage. We don't know what the numbers are exactly. But it seems like a PoE2 skill that you would want to support, so I don't know why this is made, or it has a ridiculous number, but you could technically set it up to where you break your ward, and then every 0.72 seconds it recovers, and so on and so on. Let's talk about the other Ascendancies here though. Aul first is quite underwhelming in my opinion, but there's a few things that you can do with it. First up, Precursor release is really strong with something like Untouched Soul, so every build that can use Untouched Soul is probably also going to be good with Precursor's release. On top of that, it does work with Chaos Heart, so if you're already running a Chaos Heart for whatever reason, maybe there's actually, I don't know, a good Foulborn Chaos Heart version, then you're ailment immune. So yeah, keep this one in mind. It's going to be a little bit more specific though, and on the left side, I think these are pretty weak. Auras are not what they used to, but for an Aura bot, pretty much GG, I think. On Catarina, it's mostly minion stuff, so if you want to look into this, definitely do. There is an interesting idea with stacking increased defenses, having like 12 specters. That also works for ward. So yeah, defenses in general, that is a pretty good scaler. But yeah, Dev's offering with the 20% to offering skills duration, you also have the 50% increased effect offering, which I think would be worth an Ascendancy for sure. With the right build, with the right setup, right, with some uniques, with Necromancer. But offerings kill affected damageable targets when offering duration expires. Now, with something like Arakalis, that is free, as far as I understand. But if you want to do it for yourself, I think you just... Do you just die whenever it runs out? Can you actually refresh over and over? Do you really want to play like that? Maybe there's like a way around it. Is that even worth just for 50% increased effective offering? We'll see. We have Lycia, which has one of the most just in general strong nodes that don't seem to need much build around. Bitter Heresy, this one with the small node together gives you 20% increased curse effect. It gives you 100% crit, malediction, and also 30% of physics extra. All you have to do is generate consecrated ground, which will then transform into profane ground. The question is, will zealotry be enough for this buff to be consistent? Because if you're investing into Ascendancy, you want it to be up as much as possible. Maybe you have to sacrifice a jewel slot and go Rational Doctrine. Who knows, but just extremely strong node. Farrul to Flesh. I think this one's quite potent for endgame. For early game, I've popped it. I personally don't see it. I think it's a little bit overhyped currently. But for endgame, the main issue is that there's already in-stacking, strength stacking, and abyss stacking, and they all have offensive and defensive parts at the same time. If you went full all-in on a Herald setup, you would only have the offensive part, and you really only get flat damage. I think it could fill a niche, though, between League Starter and those endgame setups, somewhere in the middle. So maybe that's a thing you might want to look into. The other thing is there's also like an application for just a Herald of Thunder build in general, maybe an auto bomber. And then we have Sinner's Saint. The only thing I could really think about is Voltaxic Burst potentially being able to get converted up to 90%, and the scaling is going to be a little bit more interesting. Or maybe on League Start, take this and double Consuming Dark so you don't have to go Assassin. For example, you could still go Pathfinder, still get the conversion. Then the Delirious one has two interesting nodes. The first one is Schizophrenic Dissociation. This one might be quite strong on League Start. Do note though that this needs a completion of a Simulacrum, which is not that easy other than for some specific builds. But if you just, for example, wander, it's going to be quite rough to do. Take 40% less damage, and then 4 seconds later, you take 40% of that damage that you would have taken. So extremely strong delayed damage. It lets you recover better. It kind of spreads out the damage. Super strong, as we know. Non-cluster jewel socketed in your passive skill tree have no effect. The question here is, does that only affect these right here? Or, as it says, you can put in a cluster. Will the jewels inside the cluster work? Or is the wording only there to protect Abyss jewels in your gear? That is what we have to see. Now, if this means no jewels whatsoever, that's kind of rough, because it excludes Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh, it excludes Watcher's Eyes, Thread of Hopes, Light of Meanings. That is a lot of opportunity cost. But then again, how often do we actually get 40% less damage taken from hits? It's very rare to get. So yeah, it's a harsh opportunity cost. If you can still equip jewels in your clusters, I think this will be a busted Ascendancy. If you can't, it'll be hard to fit into endgame setups. I want to shout out Manic Episodes for being absolutely mediocre. Even if you have the boots, the Beacon of Madness boots, it is kind of rough to fit in. All this really does is it applies Mania, which can give up to 60% increased damage taken to enemies, but it takes 15 seconds to ramp up. Yes, it does also have reduced action speed and some life energy shield recovery stuff, but it really reminds me of this Gladiator node here, which just takes too long to ramp up. Not as extreme, obviously, but still. And you already have to use the boots to begin with, so this is going to be a very, very niche node. And then last but not least, we have Farrul, which has another one of those just very cookie cutter, casually strong nodes, which is Hunt Leader. We don't know exactly how much it is, but if it is balanced correctly, it's pretty easy to keep up. So if you don't know, there are already some in Spectral Wolves, which currently there's a maximum of 10, and they give added flat fizz damage per. So it's not for a minion build. It's basically, it gives you buffs. And even if they die, you can refresh them really quickly. If they work the same as the wolves, they have a 0.5 second cooldown, But yeah, even if they die instantly, you should always have up like 7 to 8 with a fast attacking build, for example, a Wander. So this might be something that you sub into your Ascendancy and gives you increased crit chance and attack and cast speed. One thing to note is that this is on Farrul, which is quite easy to kill on League Start. The beast only starts dropping at level 80, so you're not going to get it in the first few hours, but it is a complete pushover and you're probably not even going to need a carry for that. But those are the 6 new Ascendancies, the new Bloodline Ascendancies. We don't know the Breach one for now, so we're going to have to see. In general, I think there's a few choices you could make on your League Starter. A lot of the other ones might be more build around. People have been saying that the power creep is kind of low and the borrowed power and whatnot, but this is not borrowed power, right? This is in the base game. This is here to stay, and it's going to get balanced if it doesn't perform. On top of that, remember that we get up to 2 rune drafts, which will add a lot more power creep. And if I'm right, these might be a lot stronger than people give it credit for, even though they don't scale with your damage. Some of these numbers are completely utterly ridiculous, and we might be in a situation where, for example, on League Start with these numbers, you're just gonna, I mean, you can clear yourself. You meet an essence, boom, you one-shot it, you move, you get to the boss, maybe the cooldown is up again, boom. And if you alleviate a lot of those bosses or higher HP enemies, it might just be a complete pushover, and it might be a similar situation to, for example, Mercenaries, where you just feel the power creep. But either way, I'm pretty excited. Next video will be about some of my old builds, like for example, the EA Ballista from last league, or the Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice. Anything I can update, I will include in that video. And yeah, after that, my League Starter, most likely Elementalist Wander, unless they nerf something last minute. It's probably going to be a Kinetic Rain scenario on Elementalist, but we'll have to see. I might be updating the Power Siphon of Archmage if I have time. Otherwise, just so you know, I've tested a little bit that build. Pretty good for Wander League. And but yeah, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.